Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine you are being strapped to an aircraft that has never been flown by anyone. You are tasked to take it to the sky for the first time, and you have to define its limits. Knowing very well that one wrong move could be your last. In my profession, I've realized that cockpit has a way of telling the truth. The instruments don't flatter you. The sky doesn't care about what your designation is. You need to respect the limit. Otherwise, limit shows you who's the boss. I, Group Captain Ajay Menon, retired. Currently, I am a senior test pilot with the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. I am here to take you to the edge, not to thrill you with speed, but to share with you experience of a leader when the consequences are real and the margin of error is very, very small. So in next few minutes, I will be sharing with you some of the stories from my flight line, which has taught me a lot of things. And these are practical and usable by each one of you once you go out of this room. So the year is 2023, and we were tasked to evaluate the spin characteristics of a particular aircraft, which is a prototype. Nobody has done it before. What is a spin? Spin is when deliberately you make the aircraft lose its speed, so there is no lift available on the wing, and then you give a very abrupt input on the controls, and the aircraft drops thousands of feet per second with a lot of yaw, roll, and pitch in all the axes. Now the basic question that will come into your mind is, why do such a maneuver? Well, in the Indian Air Force, all the trainee pilots are taught that in case you mishandle the controls or you do not pay heed to your parameters, there will come a point that the steady flight will go out of control and you're likely to enter a spin. You need to identify it and you need to come out of it. That is what is taught. So as I said, we were all tasked to characterize the behavior of this prototype aircraft. So all the designers and all the engineers had done the work of predicting how the aircraft would likely to behave by various CAD models and computer generation. And we in the test crew had mitigated a lot of factors, saying that in case something goes wrong, how we would come out of it. So for that day, we had a very young engineer who was the flight director. Who is a flight director? He is the one who is monitoring our parameters when we are carrying out flight in real time. And the two guys flying are two experienced test pilots who had more than 10,000 of hours between them. So as decided, we went up 20,000 feet climbing. We came to the designated area. We reduced the throttle to go for a one-turn spin at about 25,000 feet. As we reached the height, we got the throttle to idle and the speed started reducing. And then came a point when the aircraft could not sustain a flight. At that point, we gave the stick fully back and gave a full left rudder, and the aircraft entered the spin. It started dropping altitude at about 3,000 to 4,000 feet per second. And we started counting the turn. One turn, which was all that we were supposed to carry out, and thereafter recover. So as we gave the corrective input to recover, the aircraft surprised us. It did not recover. It went on its back, and it went into an inverted spin. We identified this as to be an inverted spin because we had mitigated it. And thereafter, we gave the corrective input so as to come out of the spin. And by the time we got out of the inverted spin, the height from 25,000 feet was 10,000 feet. And we had done more turns in an inverted state, which was not planned for. I handed over control to the other pilot, started debriefing about the aircraft characteristic, and said that we need to repeat this test point in order to characterize the spin. This was acknowledged by the other pilot, and we continued to climb again back to the same height. There was a silence in the cockpit, and then suddenly the radio came up. Tester 19, that is my call sign. The radio said, Tester 19, this is the flight director. I request you to abort all the further spins. We need to recheck the data and thereafter do the further spins. Now I am the captain of the aircraft. I thought about it, and instinctively, my hand went on the radio, and I said, Radar, Tester 19, request rejoin for a radar vector for a visual approach. We did not carry out any further test. We just came back and landed. We did the data debrief. Then we realized from the data what had gone wrong, and we had to modify our input so as to get the aircraft in control during recovery. As a result, now we have an aircraft which can do a 6-turn spin, and now we are able to recover it without ensuring that it does not get into a dangerous situation. Now, all this happened because of one input and the decision that we took. There are some lessons that we needed to learn. What did I learn? Managing risk intelligently. Remember, in a cockpit environment, the decision must be taken by the pilot in few seconds. The data must be incomplete. So as a leader, if you need to take a decision with incomplete data, you need to. You don't have to keep waiting all the time for the correct decision, for the correct data to come, for the correct input to come, so as to carry on with the exact thing. As a result, what will happen is you're likely to get into a dangerous situation, which can be done by mitigating the risk. How did we do that? Remember, risk is not the enemy. The unmanaged risk is the enemy. So we mitigated the risk by having a process called as the threat hazard analysis. That is, at each and every point, we have a system of checking that at this phase, something might go wrong. If it goes wrong, what is the probability of it going wrong? And if it does, how do you come out of it? In all this analysis, we had analyzed as an inverted spin as one of a possibility. So when it happened, we identified it, and we took corrective actions, and we came out of it. Which comes to the next lesson that we learned. Slow down to speed up. Remember, sometimes you get an unexpected result, what you're not looking out for. Sometimes the fastest solution is actually to pause, reassess, and then go ahead. A part of me wanted to redo the test point and recheck the characteristics of the aircraft. But then I got an input from my flight director saying that we need to reassess the data before we go for another spin. So I said, I was able to recover this time. What if there are some other factors that have not been looked into? Then there is a likelihood that the next time the recovery will not be as easy as it was this time. Which is why we aborted and we came back. Which comes to the next lesson which we learned, encouraging someone to say no and accepting it. Remember, as a leader, you may not have the answers all the time, but you have a team that you have groomed. You have to listen to them. Remember, you have to give them that authority to look out for all these faults. You have to give them the authority to question your own plan, which is why the junior flight director had the conviction to tell us that we need to reassess the data before we go for the next test point. As a result, there was a pause for a few days when we had to reassess and come out with a new recovery procedure. As a result, now we have a new aircraft which is so safe that it can continue for training for the inexperienced pilot. So let me take this opportunity again to take you to another story. During my tenure in the Indian Air Force, I was the chief test pilot at one of the base repair depot, which actually overhauls a fighter aircraft and also upgrades with new avionics and weapon system. So what you have to understand is, when we talk of overhaul, it is stripping the aircraft to the last nut and bolt, refitting it with a modern avionics and weapon system, and thereafter checking it. This means it's like a new aircraft coming out from the factory. And it is my responsibility to check that the aircraft, all the system, is working in ground and in air, and it is able to do all the tasks that it is supposed to, only then hand it over to the Indian Air Force. So in one such exercise, as I was checking the undercarriage system, that is the wheels up and down system of a fighter aircraft, while checking it, I realized that the main wheels have come down, but the nose wheel has not come down. Instinctively, I reduced the power, gave a call to ATC, and thereafter told them that I'm coming for a visual check. The ATC confirmed that the nose is not down, so I had to make a landing with the nose wheel up. I made sure that all the aircraft which were in the air were recovered, because once I land with the nose wheel up, the runway would be blocked. So I made a landing on the main wheels, made sure that the nose comes down slowly and it does not break in any sense. Once the aircraft was under control, I put the engines off, deployed the chute, and came in for a stop. By the time I came to a halt, the entire crew was there on the ground, and they were very happy that the aircraft had minimum damage and everything was okay. Within few months, the same aircraft, after rectification, was in the air, and now it's in the operational squadron, guarding our skies in case of any hostilities. What you see is not the actual aircraft, but what had actually happened. This is the actual aircraft and what had happened on that day. Now, why did I tell you this story? Because if it was not for me, had it been any other test pilot from the Indian Air Force, I can assure you the result would have been the same, because the IAF have institutionalized resilience, grit, and teamwork. Remember, failures, malfunctions, and abort is a normal process that can happen in any activity, whether be it test flight or be it real life scenario. Resilience is bought through constant practice. Checklist and SOP is within our blood. So make sure that in an activity you have these checklists and SOPs carried out, because this will give you direction and clarity. Which comes to a question which everybody asks: why do you guys have to keep flying every day? This is practice, practice, and practice. Only then will you know that your procedures have any loopholes, and if they have, you have to modify it. Only then, when the time comes, you will reduce the error and give correct execution. In the end, I just want to tell you one thing. What you take away from my talk is leadership at the edge is an art of practiced discipline. It is not about being the loudest or the one who can make the riskiest decision. It is about building a team and a system which has the capability of making the truth visible and protecting the people who can speak out the truth. Remember, edge is not a point of recklessness. It is a place where you require the clarity the most. Lead with humility, designed to absorb failure, and protect the people who have the conviction to say no to you. If you do this, you will make a team which will not only survive the edge, but come out with flying colors. Thank you for being such a lovely audience. Happy landings and Jai Hind.